This is the Sports Mastery Podcast. I'm Deshaun Fauntleroy, your peak performance coach. I've worked with some of the best athletes in the world. NFL athletes, Olympic level sprinters, D1 track, basketball, and football athletes, and elite high school and middle school athletes. I'm going to share with you the systems and strategies that all great athletes have in common. You're going to learn how to communicate effectively and confidently with coaches and teammates. You're also going to learn to develop your leadership skills and more. The only place that success comes before work is in the dictionary. Welcome back to the show, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, heroes and villains. I'm your host, Deshaun Fauntleroy. I know your time is precious, so we're going to get right into today's show. In today's show, we're going to be discussing part 2 of Confront Your Mortality. This is from a prior episode, so we're going to go further with this one. The death experience. Have you thought about that? Have you thought about dying? How did you die? What does your funeral look like? Who's there? What are you wearing? What music is playing? Or were you cremated? What does it say on your tombstone? How will people remember you? If you're listening to this, if you're a student athlete, listen to this with a parent. If you're a student athlete, listen to this with a coach. Parents, if you're listening to this, share this with your student athletes, because if they are aspiring to go to college, they might be confronted with an elective or a minor or a major in the health studies department. You see, when I first encountered these questions, I was taking a death and dying class back in college. It was interesting. We had to answer all of those questions. You know, part of our assignment was, how did you die? You had to write that out. That was like a 200-word essay. Then who was at the funeral? There was another 200-word essay. How will you be remembered? That was another 100 to 200-word essay. So it made you really think. It made you really consider death and your mortality. That's what this is about. We're confronting our mortality today in this episode. You know, and that class was interesting because we had several assignments that was based around death and dying, or the subject of the two. One of the things we had to do was visit a cemetery. Another assignment was visiting a hospital, going to a particular wing where everybody in there was dying. You didn't have a choice. If you were going to get an A out of the class, you had to do every single assignment, and that was stated up front. It's emotional considering some of these things. That's why, as I said before, if you're a student athlete listening to this, answering these questions, it might bring up some issues. So you want to be listening to this with a coach or a parent or a licensed clinical social worker or clinical psychologist. Because at the end of the day, I want you to confront your fear of death. I want you to confront your fear of rejection. I want you to confront your fear of being cut. I want you to confront your fear of breaking up in a relationship. I want you to confront your fear of being fired. I'll get back to it later. But have you ever had a near-death experience? To be honest with you, I've had several in my lifetime. I remember being 5 years old. I taught myself how to ride bikes. A 10-speed was my first bike. In between the upper bar and holding handlebars, being a daredevil, being a risk taker. 5 years old on a 10-speed, no brakes, going down a hill, across a busy street. I didn't get hit by a car. I hit the car. All I can remember is waking up in the hospital. You know, that's me. I'm a risk taker. I'm a daredevil. And I say these things because you have to take risks. You can't be worried about dying in everything that you do, you know, barring that you're not doing anything silly or stupid or ignorant. Nevertheless, you want to have the type of energy that you will take a risk. You will confront losing. You will confront exhaustion. You will confront death. It might be climbing the Alps, or marching through the Himalayas, whatever your goal is, there's always going to be a risk. You step on that football field, there's always a risk of a head injury. There's always a risk of being paralyzed. And all the propaganda that comes with it is still not stopping people from playing the sport, because the discipline of the sport has a tremendous amount of redeeming qualities versus living in fear of certain things happening to you. Nevertheless, I had a second near-death experience in 1998, doing some things I shouldn't have been doing. I was partying downtown, drinking with a gentleman that I shouldn't have been with. He didn't know how to hold his liquor. He got to talking really loud and heckling people as we were leaving, got us into a fight. Fight starts, he runs. The next thing I know, I wake up in the hospital with head injuries. Can't remember what happened to this day because I was drinking too. And it's interesting because as I was laying there, I had this serene moment where there was an uncle in the dream. And he said something to the fact of he was up in the heavens and I was in this ambulance, and he was either close the ambulance doors and go to the hospital or close the ambulance doors and go up north towards the heavens. And he was like, no, take him to the hospital. I can remember that being a serene moment. Had the near-death experience in boxing, not as dramatic as the last one, but I'm a boxing enthusiast. It's great exercise. It teaches great discipline. One of the things I got out of boxing is you lose your fear of getting hit or getting knocked down, and especially being knocked out. You know, one of the sayings in boxing is that you've never boxed until you've been knocked out. You know, and I never saw it coming. Caught a straight right hand, then a left hook, and went right to sleep. Can't remember what happened. Ran out of gas. Got tired at the end of a round. And I woke up. The next morning, I woke up with 2 black eyes, raccooned up. But I went back a week later because I like boxing. I love the sport. You know, I grew up playing football, baseball, basketball. But as I got older, I got into boxing. I like it as a form of self-defense. And I ended up coaching, actually going to some events with the team, being in the ring with amateurs up in Tacoma, up in Bend, having fun with it, watching kids go to compete in the nationals. But boxing, it offered a unique near-death experience to where I had to decide if I was going to go back in the ring and spar with the people that I was sparring with. And I got over that. So sometimes you have to take a loss in life to get to where you want to be. Sometimes you're going to lose to gain some respect. Sometimes you have to take a loss to gain some respect. Sometimes you will lose, but you have to learn during your losing. That's what sportsmanship is about. And then I had another near-death experience where I had some resistance bands on my thighs. The tube came undone in the middle of a marching exercise, a track marching and skipping exercise. Comes undone on the left leg, pops up, busts me in the right eye. What happens out of that is permanent nerve damage in the right eye. So that forced me to start wearing glasses. But one of the interesting things that came out of that is that I think you can talk to anybody that has some type of disability, or they might suffer an injury of some sort. Their powers enhance in other areas. And what I mean by that is I was able to see clearly after this accident. I could see clearly through people's bullshit. Not that I call everybody on their bullshit, but having an intuitive feel to make up for some of the nerve damage and to balance myself out. Other powers kicked in. Almost like the Daredevil, the series that's on Netflix. But I digress. I just want to give you something today in terms of thinking about death, what that actually looks like, what it sounds like, what it may feel like, just get you to think about that, to urge you forward to reach your goals, to urge you forward to take risks, to urge you forward to do the things that everybody is telling you not to do the thing that haters are telling you that you can't do. I want you to take your fear of death and become self-reliant. That's what I want you to do, because if you think about it, in this day and age, we live in a culture of dependence. People depend on people. They always gotta have a group with them, laughing, joking, giggling, having yes men and women around. Or they always gotta have entertainment. When the stress comes, they gotta go Netflix and chill instead of dealing with the fucking problem at hand. Or they gotta depend on drugs to get them through, to cloud the mind, to cloud the imagination, to not deal with the problem as it is in reality. You got to do the prescription medicine or whatever it is, or whatever else is out there that people are doing to escape. But I know for one thing, what I've observed, what I have observed, and what I still see to this day is a culture of dependence. People either depending on people, entertainment, or drugs. But I think if you can face this fear of death, if you can face this fear of losing, if you can face this fear of rejection, you won't quit. You won't give up. You'll bust through that hurdle. You'll jump over it or you'll go around it, but you'll figure a way to do it and be successful. Trying to play sports, trying to go to the next level, especially a Division I level. That D1 level, when you first get there on that year, you're on a desert island. Not everybody can play as freshmen. Not everybody's going to start as a freshman. Get to that level, the chance of you redshirting are high. It's almost like you're kind of on the team, but you're not really on the team because you're not playing and you're basically a practice dummy for a whole year. But you got to be a good practice dummy to go into the next season when you're redshirting. You got to give that first team a great look day in and day out. But then you go to games, you don't suit up. And to make matters worse, everybody is all state. Everybody is all league. So you're literally starting from the bottom. Nobody knows you. Socially dead. So how do you bring yourself to life? As I said before, you have to become self-reliant. Because at the end of the day, you are responsible for the things that happen in your life. Talking about confronting your mortality, getting over your fear of death, getting over your fear of rejection, getting over your fear of being cut, getting over your fear of losing your position. So in going through these things, you don't quit the team. I mean, facing death is one thing. We're all living on borrowed time. But think about your years in high school. You get 4 years, career's over, that's dead and gone. Think about college. You get 4 years. Once it's over, dead and gone. We're talking about athletics. And if you're lucky to go to the NBA, especially the NFL, speaking of football players specifically, 2 to 3 years, then you could be cut, get injured, or somebody just comes in that's better than you, career dead. You might not make it 6 years. I think that's the pension now. I'm not trying to scare you, not trying to frighten you. I'm just telling you what is and what the statistics say, because those stats are facts. Dying one day is a fact. You being cut from a team is a fact. You getting injured in a game or performing terrible in the first half, and then some younger person comes in and performs well, you could lose your position. That is a fact. But it's your attitude that makes these things facts. It's your behavior that makes things facts. It's how you think about yourself that will make a situation a fact. I mean, take, for instance, the recent Ohio State quarterbacks, where I think you had J.T. Barrett, Braxton Miller, Cardale Jones. These guys suffering like two quarterbacks getting injured in the same season. Then one guy comes in, shines, takes them to a championship or to a championship game. One guy has to switch to becoming a receiver. Then the initial guy gets his position back. And one guy goes to the NFL. Nobody quit. One person had to change positions. He made that choice. But if I'm right, Braxton Miller is in the NFL playing receiver. So he didn't let learning a new position stop him from reaching his goal. He didn't let learning a new position or the fear of it stop him from being successful. And JT Barrett just finished an incredible college career. The last I checked, Cardale Jones is still in the NFL. But these people got over their fear of rejection. They got over their fear of being cut, and they embraced competition. They embraced learning. They didn't listen to the naysayers. And I'll be the first to tell you, you don't win anything from blaming. So as I said before, we're looking at the fear of death. We're looking at the fear of rejection, the fear of being cut, the fear of a breakup, the fear of being fired. When you learn to face your fears, you'll learn that the power begins from within. If you're aware of what you're good at, if you're aware of what you're not good at, that's where you find your power. Figure out where you're good at. Figure out what you're good at. Figure out what you're not good at. Because at the end of the day, 95% to 96% of your life, you have no control over. You have no control over your parents. You have no control over your teachers. You have no control over your coaches. You have no control over your friends. Life is full of circumstances coming right at you all the time. But what you can do, you can realize, I want you to realize and understand that you do have a little bit of a margin of control. And the question is, how do you increase it? And I'll tell you, the gist of it is controlling yourself. As I said before, you got to learn what your weaknesses are and how you can control them. I don't want to veer too far off. As we started at the beginning, have you ever dreamed of dying? Have you ever daydreamed of dying? What did it look like? What did your funeral look like? If you were dreaming, what did it feel like when you woke up? Have you almost been hit by a car? And for that fleeting moment, your heart is beating, or you're thinking about that moment throughout the day. Think about these moments, whether you've had a near-death experience, no matter how great or how small it is. You know what that means to you. But the question is how did that spark you to do something different? How did that spark you and give you some fire to go take action at the things you want? How did that spark you to take action to go after the things that you want to do to be successful, not what others want you to do? We're getting into the fourth quarter of this episode. And when you look at fear, whether it's the fear of death, the fear of rejection, the fear of being cut, the fear of a breakup in a relationship, the fear of being fired, that fear is going to paralyze you. And what it's going to do is paralyze you by inaction. You're going to live through a series of repressions, repressed thoughts, repressed feelings, repressed emotions. And it's all wasted psychic energy. Whereas if you looked at things from the other side, realizing that you are going to die one day, you can get cut, you might get fired, you might have a breakup. But if you learn to live and be the best that you can every day and learn from your mistakes and be willing to make mistakes and be okay with failing certain things, you're going to be all right.